Hello, guys. Last one. Best of Friday evening. Hope you're well. Hope you're doing well. It's the best of this week because I've had a week off. First week in 7 months. I've decided to take a break and get away and see my family. I'm actually right now probably at my father's house in Auckland having a meal after the meal because it's 10 o'clock with my siblings, nieces, nephews, and my dad. Or I might be on the way home from that. I haven't been in Auckland since, I don't know why in my head I'm about to say 1984. It was 2018 when my mum passed. And then there was 2019. I had a kind of quiet year because the year before I'd been in there a lot because of mum. And then 2020 rolled around and COVID. So this is our first time back in Auckland to see family and stuff since 2018. So it's I'm sure I'm having a blast. So that's where I am. So this is the best of. Monday night we should be back to regular broadcasting of a nightly live show of the news of the day. Whereas today is the best of. If you're new to us, then it's really good because you're getting some snippets of what we're sort of all about and sort of the best that we've done. Maybe not all tonight. Maybe the best was yesterday. I don't know. But in general, clips that have been asked for by people, clips that have been, I think, are interesting, and also clips that have been watched more than some others. So obviously they're more popular as well. That's what we're doing. Speaking of tonight's show, Byron Clark and Sina Brown-Davis talking about the arrest of Kelvyn and Hannah Spierer. I do a commentary tonight about conspiracy theorists because my theory is conspiracy theorists are always wrong, mostly. So we're going to do one of those tonight. Karen Plunket. We all know Karen Plunket is the alter ego of Sean Plunket. Karen Plunket is the person who sits behind the microphone. Sean Plunket is the man who drives in and out from the workspace. The title of the clip is Karen Plunket's at it again. So we'll see how that pans out. Louise Wallace thinks fat people are icky, and Professor Michael Plank on cancelling the COVID traffic light system. All of those are coming up tonight. If you have you been watching us through the week, we'd love to hear from you. If you want to contact me directly, there's a contact tab on patbrittenden.com. You can go there and just say good day. You can also go to our Facebook page. I just think we're Big Hairy News on Facebook. You can look us up and just send us a message directly there as well. Obviously, you can mention stuff in the comments if you're watching us on YouTube in particular. But other than all of that, the other way you can support us and get involved is with our Patreon. Patreon's up and running. It's been going for a couple of weeks. We've got between 20 and 30 patrons in there who we appreciate vastly. We're a New Zealand news conversational show for a New Zealand audience. So we're never going to be big, as in worldwide big, obviously. We're never going to be able to use the algorithms on YouTube to pay for what we do. So if we end up doing this full-time and long-term, which is my actual goal, then we need other forms of funding, one of which could be Patreon. So if you're interested in like what you say, you can jump on board patreon.com/Big Hairy News, and you can see it's as little as $5 a month up to $250 a month. And we'd love to have you there. We'd love to have you on board to help us continue to make this little thing that we are making. Hopefully you're enjoying it and you will get the gist of what we're doing and want to be on board with it. All right. Hey, let's get into the clips for tonight, Friday night. And remember, back again on Monday for regular broadcasting, news of the day, live streaming, which means the comments that get mentioned tonight in the chat live won't make it to the show because this is pre-recorded, but you can talk to each other, and come Monday night, we'll be back to putting all the comments, a lot of the comments up live, and talk to you then. All right, team, appreciate you. Hey, shall we get on to the next part of this conversation? Shall we grab Byron and bring him in and have a bit of a chat about what's been going on in the last couple of hours?
Yes, please.
Yes, please. Let's do that.
Kia ora.
Hey, kia ora, Byron. Welcome to the show, brother.
Kia ora. Thank you for having me
on. No, always welcome. Let us set this up as to what happened and what I saw. I'm going to follow the process through, and then we're going to talk about it. Just to explain to people who are joining us tonight, and there are a lot of you, I can see it, who may not have heard the full situation yet. So, this tweet was going around Twitter tonight from Mark Dolder, who is, I think, to do with Newsroom, senior political reporter at Newsroom New Zealand, covering COVID, climate change, far-right extremism, and misinfo. He put out a tweet tonight asking about the claims that were going around that Counterspin host Kelvyn and Hannah Spierer had been arrested and have just been he was just pointed to this public statement. Counterspin ran excerpts from the March 15 terrorist live stream earlier this year. And the statement was, peer charged under Films, Videos and Publication Classification Act. Statement to be attributed to the police spokesman. Police arrested 2 people in Christchurch today in relation to alleged offences under the Films, Videos and Publication Classification Act. A man has been charged with 2 counts of distributing an objectionable publication and 1 charge of failing to carry out obligations in relation to a computer search. A woman has been charged with distributing an objectionable publication, failing out to carry out obligations in relation to a computer search, and obstructing police. They have been bailed to appear in Christchurch District Court on 31st of August 2022. As these matters are before the courts, police have no further comment to make. I was thinking, we might have to get ourselves a reporter up to Christchurch for that day. So that then turned into a report on the Herald, but that's basically just repeating that. I then contacted Byron and said, Byron, can we confirm any of these things? And Byron actually pointed me to Counterspin's own Telegram. And this is Counterspin's own Telegram saying Counterspin hosts Kelvyn Alps and Hannah Spierer arrested. So this is Counterspin's. Now, the reason I put in the write-up to this episode, there are some credible and not so credible sources. I almost take Counterspin themselves saying they've been arrested as not a particularly credible source of information. Because as we know, many places need to cause sort of conflict to then fundraise off the back of it.
I was literally just going to say that.
Yeah.
How can they make money off this?
Yeah,
Always
exactly.
on the grift.
So whilst they themselves say that they've been arrested, police have seized computers, phones, and cameras. Counterspin director's home was also raided with equipment seized, awaiting further details. Then later on, so that was at 7 o'clock tonight, and then at 8:20 tonight, Kelvyn and Hannah have been released. We'll update once more. We have more information. From there, so we're still kind of going, in my head, I'm kind of going, let's be careful what we say. Let's, this is alleged. But from there, I guess the one media outlet that's prepared to jump into the water is stuff.co.nz. Hosts of far-right media outlet Counterspin reportedly arrested and charged. The founder and hosts of far-right media outlet Kelvyn Alp and Hannah Spierer have reportedly been arrested and charged with distributing an objectionable publication. A police spokesperson said 2 people, a man and a woman, were arrested on Thursday night in Christchurch. They did not aim Alp and Spierer, but confirmed the arrest had been made following online posts saying Alp and Spierer had been detained. Right, so there's a confirmation that they were detained. In a statement, police said the 2 people were also arrested for failing to allow officers to search their computers. So that'll be in that what we just read. They were bailed and will appear in Christchurch District Court on August 31st. Now, I guess this kind of goes to show, not this, but yet. Earlier this year, Counterspin published online excerpts from the March 15 terrorist live stream. The couple were involved in the anti-mandate movement, etc., etc., etc. We know all that. Fire and Fury documentary, they were a focus of that. Our performer soldier had multiple failed political campaigns, launched Counterspin, yada, yada, yada. Goes on and on and on. They shared the information, or Kelvyn Morgan shared the screenshot. And this is the bit that I also thought shows the serious nature of what we're talking about. In 2019, white supremacist Philip Arps was charged over sharing a video of the March 2015 terror attacks in Christchurch. He had sent the video to 30 people and was sentenced to 21 months in prison. So my first thought, then you guys can get out of it. But based on this idea of being able to fundraise off the back of this, I hope that the police, if this is indeed the situation, have got all their ducks lined up, because if they're going to make an arrest and they're going to make allegations, they need to make a conviction. Because if they don't, these guys will make a shit ton of money and get a shit ton of publicity of this. So all I'm saying out loud is, I hope, and I expect they do, they've got all their ducks lined up, and that if this is what's happened, which it looks to be pretty confidently now, that it then gets followed all the way through to the correct conclusion, and not something that could be used by these guys as a fundraising mission akin to, saving the whales by Greenpeace. That was my first thoughts. But how about Byron? Do you want to jump in, because you've just joined us? What are your thoughts, mate?
Yeah. Essentially, like you've just been saying, Counterspin is going to use this to promote themselves and to present themselves as victims, victims of the deep state, victims of the communist tyranny or whatever. And so that's why it would be good to be a little bit skeptical at first when they're the only ones announcing that they have been arrested. When I saw those initial screenshots and things, I was very much like, let's wait till we get some confirmation. And then, of course, we got that from Mark, and then the stuff in the Herald and so on. So we now know that, this is one of the rare factual statements made on the Counterspin Media Telegram.
The rare ones, the rare accurate ones.
Yeah. Stop clock and all that. So yeah, I've been skimming through some of the comments on there, and there's already I think that first thread has 350 comments, second one's 150, and yeah, people are making all the kinds of claims that you'd expect. A lot of them are blaming this on the Fire and Fury documentary that Stuff put out a week ago now, wasn't it?
A couple of weeks, yeah.
A couple of weeks ago, yeah. I think this has quite possibly been in the works for longer. I mean, if the police had a warrant to seize equipment, to search computers, I mean, they would have had to get that from a judge. They would have had to, do all that. I doubt that they've just seen the documentary and suddenly got everything together for that. I think this has probably been a long time coming, to be honest. And as is mentioned in that Stuff article, they had shared excerpts from the Christchurch shooters live stream, and those excerpts were part of a so-called documentary claiming that event was a false flag. That documentary itself was pretty quickly classified as an objectionable publication. So, we don't know for certain if this is the objectionable publication that they have been arrested for, but it's what's the most likely explanation? I'd say this is the most likely explanation.
Yeah. Can I just say as well, looking at this, the link that you just sent us right then, Byron, now the media are saying police have arrested them. So even that, and the Stuff one was a little bit less than that, but have arrested them. Now the allegation is what the charge is. But I don't know if that means officially confirmed, but now media are saying police arrest and charge far-right Counterspin Media peer in Christchurch. So do we say that's confirmed? We're certainly saying that's what the media is now saying is confirmed. Sina, got any thoughts?
I'm just going to have a sip of those salty right-wing tears. Yeah. I think my aroha, when I think about them being done for showing those objectionable things from the white supremacist terrorists, I give my aroha to the Muslim community, first and foremost. Yeah, thinking of them. And I think police probably been working on this since February, hopefully, but you're right. I hope the case is robust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think what Byron just said about having to have warrants and that kind of stuff. I mean, police don't just go to a judge and say, we're not entirely sure. Let's have a crack. And the judge goes, yeah, sweet as. There needs to be an evidence and proof and saying the likelihood of this being there. So that when I say I hope they've got their ducks lined up, I'm not being defeatist. I'm kind of going, actually, I'm probably more going, within the court system, sometimes people get diversion or sometimes they get charged and found guilty, but they don't get sentenced. Like I just want to make sure that this can't be spun as, it wasn't us. Yes, we had to, so often in these cases, people will say, well, I had to admit my guilt because of X, Y, Z, but I didn't really do it. I just hope there's no way that they can kind of spin that sort of yarn.
Yeah, that they've got them well and truly in a box with nowhere to go. I guess it's always been the hard thing with these guys is that for folks like us that look at these guys so much and go, how are you getting away with this all the time? Where's the action? When's the shoe going to drop on these guys? Nobody's doing anything. Is that you don't know when something like this is going to happen. And I guess this is why I'm taking so much glee in it, is because it's been so long coming that, they've been fucking around for so long and that now it's finally find out a clock.
Yeah. Fuck around and find out.
100%. So yeah, it's going to be something to follow over the coming weeks, and I just hope they hit them hard.
I'm interested to see if people like the Free Speech Union are going to jump up and defend them. What do you think?
I wasn't thinking of them, but you know what I just thought? We talk a little bit about Plunket's platform here, and they had Alps on this week. I wonder if they're taking that video down. I wonder if they're a bit worried about the interview that Michael Laws did with Kelvyn Alps this week, where he was spouting a whole bunch of, I don't know if it was this stuff, But certainly, maybe that's going to be part of the evidentiary thing against them. The interview on the platform with Michael Lewis.
Oh, that's sweet. It's like Alps. I can't wait for his live to come out because he's like, his politics like steroid rage every time he opens his mouth.
I mean, if the reports are to be believed, and they've scooped up their phones, their servers, their laptops, and all of that sort of stuff, they don't have the ability to put the show out there, which is great. But what is on those devices that hasn't been broadcast? All of their communications and who they're talking to.
Yeah, gosh.
It could be an information goldmine.
It could also possibly be the means which has stopped a terrorist attack or violence. Yeah,
potentially. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the history of Kelvyn Alps is. Sorry, Chewie, you go, mate.
I was just going to. It's hard to overstate how important this could be, and the hole that it could blow in a whole bunch of the I guess alternative right wing media. There's a lot of links in there that could be there.
Yeah, actually, as you're saying that, Chewie, and I'm thinking, the January 6th committee in America at the moment, how they're pulling all those threads together from various devices and people and linking that person with that person and that person with that person. And if they've got, I mean, you could argue, why do they want to stop them getting the hard drives? Because they may argue we didn't do anything, fine. But maybe the reason's more going to be because there is some pretty heavy shit on there as well that they know is going to be. Like, for example, I received the massacre in Christchurch. Someone Facebooked me the manifesto, and it was in my inbox. I never read it. I never saw it. But what I did see was all of a sudden it was gone. And so through the government and through Facebook, they'd got into my messages box and they'd removed it because it became an illegal document. So therefore, even if there's stuff like that through their computers, that's going to be like super serious because it's illegal to possess those sorts of things at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And that'll be, I would guess, if they've got an edited or say doctored version, that you'd have to have the full version there, which is the real issue. I think if you've got, I'm not sure what the law comes to if you've got an excerpt or an edited version of the original. But
I think it's all objectionable. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I think in this case, this supposed documentary was made in a country where it's not illegal to have the footage, which I think is most countries other than New Zealand. Actually, it's the classification office here that's deemed it objectionable, and so then the documentary was released online, and then that had to get its own classification. So the documentary itself is objectionable. If that was what they had, that is an objectionable publication. I mean, chances are there could be more than just that documentary. We don't know yet, and hopefully that information will all come out once this goes to court.
Oh, look, I think one of the things that I'm most interested in is what Chewie kind of intimated, which is I wonder what's in there between all these groups or between whatever else. That's going to be fascinating as well, if there is indeed some of that stuff in there. So I guess,
but there's a lesson there. You can't keep shit talking about violence, making death threats against our journalists, against politicians, against people that disagree with you, and be really arrogant and flippant about it all the time. Yeah, you can't do that to people. So yeah.
I'm just going to highlight a comment from the chat right now because someone's teasing my Christmas present early. Sam Smith asking, is Damien Dement next? And you just can't play with my heart like that. Oh, that would be glorious.
2 or 3 weeks ago, we had a conversation here on Fire and Fury with Paula Penfold, documentary filmmaker, investigative journalist, that looked at the instigators of the Wellington protest. And she didn't use this term, and I don't think it was in the documentary, but what some people refer to as the disinformation dozen in New Zealand. The people who are kind of mostly driving the disinformation around vaccines, COVID, mask mandates, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So since then, we've been getting quite a bit of pushback, and I have to say, look, to be honest, nothing that's a concern. Like, I'm not going to sit here and complain like some people, aren't able to go home after they broadcast, or they're getting death threats, nothing like that. Just pushback. And look, I'll be honest with you, your pushback's fine. Like you're welcome to share your views, even if I disagree with them. Fine, right? As long as we're respectful to one another, fine. I haven't banned anyone from anything. Oh no, that's not true. Someone started to talk about the Christchurch massacre being a false event. They got banned immediately. Gone. You're off my Facebook, off my YouTube altogether. You're gone, because I ain't gonna play that game, homie. Several people amongst this conversation have sent me a documentary. Well, it's not even a documentary, sorry. It's just a clip that someone's put together. Now, they're specifically talking about the COVID vaccine, and they're specifically talking about young athletes having heart attacks. So if you know anything about me right now, from the time you've spent with me doing this, I research. I look and I dig and I try and find the answer. And I'll be honest with you, sometimes I go looking for the answer and I find the answer that I'm not really that happy about, but it's the answer. I've used this term several times before. I'm sure you know what it is. It's the term gish gallop. You've probably heard me talking about gish galloping before. A gish gallop is a rhetorical technique in which a person in a debate attempts to overwhelm their opponent by providing an excessive number of arguments with no regard for the accuracy or strength of those arguments. During a gish gallop, a debater confronts an opponent with a rapid series of many specious arguments, half-truths, misrepresentations, and outright lies in a short space of time, which make it impossible for the opponent to refute them all within the format of a formal debate. So that's a gish gallop. A gish gallop is when a whole bunch of information is thrown at you with literally nothing to back it up, and it takes them a few seconds to put all that information out there, and it takes you a long time to research it and a long time to actually go, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is slightly wrong, this is right. It takes a long time. So what I did today was I got this. This is one of the videos that I've been sent, and it's titled "Why a Healthy Athlete's Collapsing." Now, this might get us kicked off YouTube, this conversation, because they're not fans of this, although this is on YouTube. And I'm going to show you the first 60 seconds. Okay. So obviously this is not endorsed by me. In fact, let's be fair. I wanted to reject this. That's how I started, but I researched it. So this is specifically talking to people who are vaccinated, then having cardiac arrest, especially young people, especially athletes. I'll play you the first 60 seconds of this, and there's a reason I'm playing you the first 60 seconds, and I'll explain it at the end.
A Baker County high school senior is in the hospital after collapsing on the tennis courts.
Breaking new details on the deaths of a high school soccer player.
Finland, Denmark's star man Christian Eriksen collapsing towards the end of the first half.
The Kennedy High community mourning tonight after one of their high school football players died.
A South Carolina high school football player has died after collapsing at football practice.
Star college basketball player collapsing on the court. We want to warn you, the video may be difficult to watch.
Florida Gators star Keontae Johnson collapsing during the game.
A West Catholic high school student has died after collapsing during a football scrimmage.
On mile 8, she suddenly felt fuzzy and blacked out.
17-year-old Ryan Jacobs' heart stopped.
Unexpectedly collapsed on the field.
Megan went into cardiac arrest.
Collapsing during Friday night's football game.
Right. I stopped it at 54 seconds. The reason I stopped it at 54 seconds was I'm the kind of person that can kind of go down a rabbit hole and stay there. So I said to myself today, I'm going to give this an hour of my time. I gave it an hour of my time. And in that hour, I got to look at and research and try and figure out the first 54 seconds of this clip. That's a gish gallop. They put out a claim or series of claims here that last 54 seconds. It takes me an hour to try and figure out what they're saying. And in fact, it's not even true that this is 54 seconds of claims. I don't know if you picked up on it, but that's actually 4 or 5 video claims that are repeated twice. Like the video 1 is also video 6. So it might have felt like a lot, and it was a few, but they were repeating them again. So they used one, and then they used it again as the 6th or 5th or 6th. The second one came back again as the 7th. So they were actually repeating over themselves. So the example of the Gish Gallop is 1 hour of my time is 54 seconds of their claims. So what I've literally done is gone through and I've tried and attempted to find either every single clip that played here, the original source from it, and then find out about the cardiac event that that person had and why, or at the very least find a story about the people they're talking about. So we're going to go through and have a look piece by piece. You probably, I mean, you may not remember this, but this was the first story that was used, and I think this is actually the literal exactly. Yep. So it's exactly the same one that was just in the thing. So this is literally the same one that I watched, and I'm not going to take too much time on these because some of them are shorter, some of them are quicker. That story was January 21st, 2021. Okay. They're using it, remember, as an example. Look, let me just say this once. This is going to be for all. They are using it, whoever made this video, as an example of how the vaccine is causing heart attacks and damaging hearts. So that claim that I just made is their claim for every video, so I don't need to say it again. That event happened to that high school student, January 21st, 2021. Vaccine wasn't available to high school students in January 21st, 2021. Gone. Easy, just like that, gone. Their first claim, gone. The second one was they talked about the high school player, and I don't know if this is exactly the right one. Oh, there you go. That's the same video, right? So I found literally the same video and looked it through. The person's name was Ethan Trejo, and Ethan Trejo, once the coroner came in, he died of cardiac arrhythmia due to a blockage in the artery. It was artery blockage. Now, there is research that talks about myocarditis being brought on by the vaccine. That's real. That's research. That's out there, right? There is no research anywhere that says the vaccine will cause an artery to block. Debunked. Gone. Not the case. We shall go on to the next one. Oh, actually, was that the one? Because one of them also talked about it was congenital abnormality. That's the other thing. So it was a blocked artery and it was congenital. And just for clarity, congenital means one or more problems with the heart structure that are present at birth. So it was an issue that person had from birth. Nothing to do with the vaccine whatsoever. 3. We'll keep going. There was a story there. This is not exactly the same story, but it is the story about the I think it was a Norwegian soccer player collapsing on the field. So this is the soccer player, and that's him collapsing up in the corner. Right? Very easy to research that one and have a look. Their directors and their doctors, he wasn't vaccinated. No vaccine, not vaccinated, no part of it, no connection. The next story is a Kennedy High School athlete, and you can see actually that this is one that is exactly the same video.
Friday night's football game against Hiram Johnson. Good evening, and thanks for joining us, everyone. I'm Marley Ginter.
So same story, and we went through and we found out that he passed away
after collapsing at football practice.
That's the same
This
story.
happened at Dutch Fork High School in Irmo. The school says 17-year-old Jack Al-Khatib died.
So Jack Al-Khatib died, and I found a story that Jack Al-Khatib's mother said that his autopsy revealed that he had a rare heart disease unrelated to vaccines. Not the case. No vaccines, unrelated to it. The Florida Gator basketball player that they showed twice collapsing, well, he actually, that happened on the 12th of December, 2020, before the vaccines existed. The West Catholic football player, the same story. That was actually in the situation.
Collapsing during a football scrimmage. The scrimmage actually was
literally the same story. He had a previously diagnosed enlarged heart. He passed away from a condition that they already knew about. Now, the thing about conspiracy theorists, and I know I joke a little bit when I say conspiracy theorists are always wrong, is what actually happens when they manipulate, twist, add on actual information that's not there, they exaggerate or they outright lie, is that when they do have a situation or a case, they sort of lose all credibility for that as well. And I'll be honest, this was a situation, and this is exact video that was used.
Mother cardiac arrest. Caney, a fire
that was the,
Smith. Megan blacked out.
that was the bit that was
Mile
used.
8,
That bit
she
there?
suddenly felt fuzzy and blacked out.
So that's literally the same story. And research on her says this: it remains unclear what caused her problem. Among the possible factors, say her doctors cited are hereditary. Her father died at 53, a family history of heart disease, and myocarditis, a mild cardiac inflammation that has been associated with COVID-19. So if we're being fair, when you go down this rabbit hole, you got to answer all of it. There's a chance that her situation was related to the vaccine, because it does happen. It is out there. Myocarditis is a real thing, right? Myocarditis is a real thing, and there is an increased risk of it with the vaccine. So this is being honest, right? So I acknowledge that. However, the research also shows that if you catch it and get it early, that for most people, it doesn't cause any problems. Some people need steroids. Some people it just goes away with. And for a very small percentage of people, it can be quite dangerous if not treated. The other part of that conversation, though, if you're talking in its fullness, is that the research was very clear when that came out, that catching COVID was how can I word that better? That myocarditis, the chances of getting myocarditis was increased even greater if you caught COVID. So yes, there was a chance of getting myocarditis if you got the vaccine. Very, very slim chance, very small microscopic chance, especially for teenage boys. For some reason, it showed up there. But the chances of getting myocarditis if you caught COVID was greater. And if you don't believe me, go watch the Joe Rogan clip where he was debunked. Joe Rogan was debunked live on air with his guest showing him the data that says that. This is another story.
Citrus High's principal Laura Mason released a
that was
message on
talked about.
Facebook Tuesday night.
The person
that said
is
in part,
Antonio
quote,
Hicks.
"We have suffered a great loss, and the pain we all feel is immeasurable."
And this was 54 seconds in. And again, doing some research on this situation, it was a hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, I think, which is typically inherited. Those with the condition have a 50% chance to pass it on the disease to their children. So it was a hereditary disease, and it had nothing to do with the vaccine. So when I put my tongue in my cheek slightly and I say things like, conspiracy theorists are always wrong, I do then justify it by saying are always wrong mostly. What I want to be able to do is offer at least people who are using this kind of thing the challenge to actually follow up on what you think is accurate. That document, or that video should never be used again by someone as evidence for vaccine related heart damage. The person or people who have been sending me that, you should never use that again. It has been completely debunked because of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 examples that happened in the first 54 seconds. One of them there's no answer for. The other 7 are all unequivocally not that. So it should never be used again. So someone's now going to sit there and go, well, what are all these people dying from, heart disease and stuff when they're young and they're athletes? Well, I've got an answer for that as well, as sad as it may seem. This is a research paper that was done between July 2014 and June 2018. It went for 4 years. In that 4 years, so this is before COVID, no vaccines, but in that 4 years, 331 cases of confirmed SCA, which is sudden cardiac arrest, where there was 158 survivors and 173 fatalities. So that's, 80 to 100 a year. 15.4% of those were in middle school, which I think we can classify as sort of intermediate school and the first 2 years of high school. 61% were in high school. 16% were in college, and 16% were in college and professional athletes. So every year in America only, there's 80 athletes who die of a sudden cardiac arrest before COVID came around. So this was a study that was done before COVID. This is not retrospectively trying to change someone's opinion. This was done before COVID. And there's 80 students a year in America dying from heart attacks, healthy, active students who are athletes, student athletes, forget that. So yes, you can go and find 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 examples of it pretty easily. If you think that's been happening 80 a year, so in the last 10 years, there's been between 800 and 1,000, let's say. It's pretty easy to find stories on 8. What's hard to do is then connect them to the vaccine. So my challenge to you is, if you're going to pass stuff on, do the research yourself. The people who have sent me this haven't done the research. And it kind of makes me a bit mad, because it's not that difficult to do. I found the first one in about 3 to 5 minutes. The first one was a person who had an SCA, a sudden cardiac arrest, before the vaccines were even available to them, as was about the fourth one. So what I would say to you is, if you want to put forward a position, A, you don't need to lie about it. B, you don't need to exaggerate it. C, you shouldn't have to try and twist any facts and figures. If your argument is strong and accurate for whatever you're talking about, then actually it should stand up to any critique. This does not. And when I say things like conspiracy theorists are always wrong, it's because most of the time, pretty much all of the time, when you put it up to a critical eye, it very, very rarely, if ever, stands up to it. We're sort of starting to move away from the Plunket conversation, but I do want to put something out there. I think you guys missed the context. I didn't.
No, we didn't.
The Countdown media lady was okay with being interviewed by Plunket. The problem arose when she realized he did not work for the government-funded RNZ. Is BHN also government-funded? Fuck, I wish, bro. Take it.
That's why I've got this great set behind me.
Yeah.
Let
me address a couple of things here, right? And this is going to sound real wanky, but see that one there, and that one there, and that one there. Like, this is one of numerous broadcasting awards that I've won all over the world, in the US and the UK and Australia and New Zealand. I'm not saying that to say yay me, yay me, but when we talk about people who are having an expert opinion, I feel pretty qualified to be able to tell you how broadcasting works. I'm not saying I'm the best at it, but I've been doing it for a long time at a particularly high level and working with the best in the business. Yeah. If Countdown media lady said, I'll talk to you, and then goes, oh no, I don't want to talk to you anymore, that's it. You don't get to then go, well, you said you would. You said you would. So now you have to.
It's not a written contract.
You don't have to. So, Nicholas, that you are 100% wrong, and we know the context, and the context is horse shit, right? And the reason that she didn't want to go on is obviously because Plunket is an asshole. He is a big, hairy, sticky, needing to be wiped asshole, and he treats his contributors and guests that he doesn't agree with like dirt on the soles of his shoe. And it's just fucking ironic how often that will be a female. Far, far more.
Well, that seems to be
if
the
it
trend,
was a
doesn't
male.
That seems to be the trend. That's the trend that we've seen all the way along. I have been scrambling around looking for awards as well. But
I'm sorry. I know that was fairly cringe what I just did, but
I don't work for them anymore, so I think I can put up like a Top Gun Sales Award, JB Hi-Fi. So there you go. That's just one that I had to hand.
Look, I know what I just did was a bit cringe, but what I'm saying is, I have worked in that industry for a long time. I have produced Paul Holmes's breakfast show. I've been involved with that. I've worked on the #1 radio station in the country. I've had the #1 rating radio show in my time slot for 7 straight years. I know how the system works. I know the ethics and the appropriateness around getting interviews. I'm not doing this to blow smoke up my own ass because no one else will. I'm telling you this because I feel that I have a pretty well-rounded set of skills and experience to be able to talk to. This is not an appropriate reaction from a broadcaster to an interviewee. It's not. And the reason she didn't want to go on is because Plunket gets people on and he yells at them. And you know what? The community is starting to learn that. There is a reputation coming now. So if you get an interview to go on RNZ, on News Talk ZB, or Today FM or any other station, you know what's going to happen to you. If you get an interview to go on the Plunket, if he disagrees with you, you're going to be screamed at. If he likes you, a la Chantel Baker, he's going to stick his nose firmly up your ass and offer you a fucking job. Right? So this is why people are not going on or not wanting to go on, because they don't want to participate in his theater, the theater of the alt-right, the theater of the QAnon. They don't want to have a part to play in it. When they don't, he then cries and whimps and turns into a snowflake like he claims everyone else does.
Yeah, there's a whole term for it. He's sea lining.
Explain that to me.
Sea lining refers to the disingenuous action by a commentator of making an effort to engage in sincere and civil debate, but asking a persistent series of questions that will just go down a path. And when they don't want to go down that path, then you win. That's not about information. It's about winning. And it's about badgering people. And then when they sort of go, well, I don't want to be a part of this because you're not a good actor on this, then you win. He won that. And there's people that are definitely seeing that voice, like the commentator saying that we missed the point, that there was an agreement. It's not a written down thing. It's like anything. Consent can be withdrawn for whatever reason. That's it. You lost. You lost because this person realized who you are and what you were doing and wanted to do something different with their day. That's it.
Yep. And look, here's the thing, right? And you've probably heard me say this if you watch the show, but I'm sure you've definitely heard me say this. I'm not entitled to anybody's time for any length of time or anything. Plunket is basically demonstrating what he claims the woke left do. He's demonstrating a huge amount of entitlement. He thinks he's entitled to speak to people. I've said it numerous times here. I'm not entitled to anyone's time. I try and set up all sorts of podcasts. I'm talking to Don McGlashan tomorrow morning for a podcast. I'm very excited about that, about being halfway down Dominion Road. But I'm not entitled to his time. I'm not entitled to anybody's time for the podcasting that I do. And even if I do manage to get one, I'm not entitled to keep them for as long as I want. They can get up and walk out anytime they want to. And there's this. And I think that's it. It's almost the entitlement that you see going on. It is actually exactly what it's projection, he talks about all these entitled woke people and all these people. What is he doing? You said yes, so therefore I am going to interview you. I have the right to, he's a fucking Karen. There you go. Karen Plunket. From now on, it's Karen Plunket on this show. All right. Deal?
Deal. I also have to say that I'm glad that Paul has remembered something that I called him last time. That Sean Plunket is an onion of shit. Every time you peel a layer back, more shit. You just keep going. Never ends.
Let me say this for people who are watching this who might get door stopped. That's what it's called, getting door stopped. In the old days, it was the journalist turning up and I'd like a comment with a camera in your face. Just start swearing. Because business mummy and daddy, that's their one condition. No swearing on the platform. Just start swearing. Don't even get angry. Oh, how the fuck are you? It's having a fucking good day. It's a fuck. What the fuck's been going on with you? Yeah, fuck you. Oh, you're a good cunt, Sean. Let's just go for it. I mean, don't be angry. Just tell Karen Plunket what you're feeling and use every expletive in the world, and he'll have to move you on. Yeah, fuck this and fuck that, and every expletive. Don't have to. Everyone's agreeing. Like, okay, now I like this. That was an off the cuff, but maybe we need to get a t-shirt done. Look,
we could get his face with the Karen asymmetrical haircut.
It's Paul. It's Paul Cook's actually right. Oh, dude, we got to do that. All right, are there any t-shirt makers out there watching? Contact us. Go to patbritton.com. Contact me, and let's get a Karen Plunket shirt done. We'll sell it, raise some money for this thing, because unlike what someone accused us of tonight, which I would happily take, we don't have any funding from anyone yet. We do this for the love of it. All right, Karen Plunket. Don't you love it when you kind of spitball as you're talking and then just...
But that's how I got onion of shit.
Yeah.
Which is a delightful image.
Oh. Okay. I'm going to work on that today, tomorrow. Yep. Maybe not tomorrow because I've got a podcast halfway down Dominion Road, but I'll look at that. Karen Plunket would be fantastic. So here's a conversation that went on the AM show this morning. Louise Wallace hits out at fat women in fashion advertising during the AM panel. The first clip we're going to look at, Nathan, that's Nathan King from Z, yeah? So Nathan is talking about, it was quite funny actually, if we're not going to watch the whole thing, but Nathan starts talking about one of the things we can do to help, obesity in society. And he talks about a sugar tax. And as soon as he starts talking about we should do something about it, him and Louise is nodding away. And as soon as he starts talking about a fat tax, her face is like, ugh. And you can just see that she's like, no, not into that, not into the sugar tax. So Nathan's just finished the conversation about a sugar tax, and then the conversation goes on.
But are they feeding us that?
Hey, fundamental, that just tape over people's mouths with gaffer tape.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean,
pretty funny. Gaffer tape on people's mouths. That'll solve the problem. My jokey joke. Now, just think, and I'm not trying to be sensitive to this, but just think if that was said about any other physical attribute of a human being in that kind of way. Like, think of a way to make a particularly offensive joke about it that, that was the whole studio just laughed at, sort of thing. There's an interesting standard for being able to talk about fat people, overweight people.
I mean, sooner or later, sooner or later, surely it's what goes in here.
Yeah.
And what people, and I think that unfortunately we have normalised the idea of being overweight, normalised it. And I'll give you an example of that, is that when I was overseas quite recently, you would pass by these huge ads and for fashion, like whether, I don't know if it was Zara, but something like that, and there would be distinctly overweight women, like, dare I say it, fat women in these ads advertising clothes, and that is now seen as normal.
Doesn't it reflect what normality is? Doesn't it tell people
Doesn't mean it's right, though, and it's not right because people are getting sick.
If it's unhealthy,
yeah,
it's not a good thing.
So there's really interesting words used in that about it's not right. To me, that's a value judgment. I think it's okay to put out there, it's not a healthy choice. It's an unhealthy situation to be in. We know that. But the idea of right and wrong, because if it's not right, that means it's wrong. That means to be overweight is wrong. And that's a really heavy way and a heavy language to put on someone, and I'll talk about this more shortly, and I'm happy to talk about my own experiences, that it's not quite as easy as, well, just stop eating then. You guys want to jump in before we go on?
Yeah, I just want to say that with these chat panels and stuff like that, you see this a lot. I'm just going to shotgun a real simple reckon out there with absolutely no nuance on it at all. Like, if we want to talk about how New Zealanders are generally heavier than they have been over the last 40 years, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the food options that are available. Let's talk about how much the supermarkets have, what's the most affordable foods out there.
Yeah.
And
then this conversation, Nathan King makes that point. He says, it's also a sociological issue or a societal issue that the cheapest foods are often the worst for you as well.
And if we want to talk about advertising, let's talk about the fact that this is probably quite jarring to her, because we've had, again, for as long as advertising has existed, we've had really, really thin people for everything. And now we're seeing more advertising reflecting who's going to be wearing these clothes. And she's like, oh, they're fat. They might be. They might also be normal, And she's just going, oh, they're heaps bigger than the models that we used to have. Yeah, but they're normal people that you would see in the street and that sort of thing. So, yeah.
When someone offers opinion, and we hear this term quite a lot in society today in commentary, and you can go, that opinion is just completely based in some kind of misogyny or sexism or white supremacy or whatever it is. The way she speaks, I don't know if there is such a thing as like fat phobic, but seems to me to be completely based in that adage of demeaning hatred towards fat people.
Oh, you can hear it in their voice.
Wrapped up in we just want to make them healthier. But to me, and being honest, who's heard this kind of stuff his whole life, it doesn't come across like someone caring for their health. It comes across like someone going, ew, fat people.
I don't want to see that. Yuck.
Yeah.
Yuck.
Yeah, it reminds me of the. I mean, I imagine this is why the AM show has done this, because of the whole Jordan Peterson sort of thing that popped up over the past few weeks about fashion magazines and having women on the front of fashion magazines, and how that was going to destroy the fabric of Western civilization, etc., etc. I mean, in this example, she sort of conflates the words normal with the words right, as opposed to wrong, which is a sort of often a sort of language tactic that you'll see that people do just subconsciously, which is a great example of what we call ideology, right? Ideology is how things are constructed as being normal or natural or the truth or whatever that is, right? And that's the conflation of those two words that she does there. The other thing would be, sorry, no, you Pat, go. You go.
I was just going to say as well, what you were saying before, Chewy, about always being skinny. It's not actually. I don't actually quite think that's true. There are different standards for different eras. Famously, I think Marilyn Monroe, who was a sex icon of her era, was either a size 16 or a size 14 or something. And that was we all hear about in history the idea of the Rubenesque woman. And, heroin chic was big in the 1990s, and that's not acceptable at the moment. And in fact, we can play a little bit here and giving Ryan Bridge some credit. He goes on to talk about sometimes, we also think that having models that are too skinny is not acceptable.
But in the same way, there was outcry when we put too skinny models on the fronts of magazines.
That's unhealthy too, though. You just have to be normal. But I look at all of us, and you're a bit skinny, but I look at all I've been working out.
Can I just point out as well?
What a horrible exercise. Yeah.
Can I point out as well, a 62-year-old, and I'm not saying about this anyone in particular, but in general, having plastic surgery to look younger is not normal, because that's actually a false image being put forward, and in my opinion quite an unhealthy one as well, of what's being modeled to society about having people who refuse to look their age and would choose to go have an operation where knives cut into them to look a younger age than they really are. Just kind of putting that out there as what is and isn't normal.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily try to play their own game of what is sort of what's meant to be normal and how we display it. I'd just call her a dumb bitch. We don't really need to sort of. And she looks like
you can't look at somebody in a window who's modelling a fashion brand and perhaps they're a size 16 and say that they're unhealthy. That doesn't mean that they're unhealthy.
Okay, well, fine then. Then you can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways. So you either advertise people with people who have what I would see as a normal body, maybe a size 12 or 14. You put a size 18 there, people think that's normal and it's healthy. Might be healthier when you're 25. When you're 55, it won't be.
And look, this is the thing that is difficult with these kinds of conversations. And when you hear about, like I said before, about a conversation or a comment that's wrapped up in some kind of ism, but really the ism is the thing driving the commentary. Actually, to say carrying too much weight is unhealthy, it's perfectly acceptable. It's perfectly acceptable to have the opinion that, not having as much fat around your vital organs, around your heart, carrying it for wear and tear is a better option than not. But to use words like you are not a normal human being. Now, she didn't say it quite as bluntly as that, but she used the word as not normal. I mean, what is normal? Normal to me would be like what is common. And actually, I'm not saying it's a good thing, but being obese is kind of common in Western society. And then if, like what I think, Chewy, you were saying, if you look in various groups of people, like, for example, people with less money, being obese is even more common because, as we all know, the foods that are accessible to someone with less money are less nutritious, are less full of nutrition, decent nutrition, but are massive amounts of calories. So it's just there's a lot that we'll play one more clip and then go on. But before we do that, do you guys have anything else? You were going to say something else here, George, and you allowed me in.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to mention, and this comes up a lot, is there's this almost fallacy that is at the center of their conversation, and that's that somehow the fashion billboards that she's seeing are going to sort of, poison people to become fat, right? These people put so much sort of faith in the media that they consume for themselves that they just assume that everyone else is like zombies for fashion billboards. I mean, it's totally not the case, right? A fashion billboard, having someone, again, the Jordan Peterson example, having someone who's a bit more chubbier than the traditional fashion model on front of a magazine is not going to make people fat. It's food that's going to make people fat.
Yeah, just remember, you've got to change your life to make sure that this person, Louise Wallace, is happy. Certainly don't factor in your own life or happiness into it. She just doesn't want to see you, if that's cool. So, just get on to that. Just gaffer tape your mouth shut.
Yeah,
I know whose mouth I'd like to gaffer tape shut.
That's been suggested in the comments as well. Before we play these comments, let's actually play the last clip. Let's put some of these comments out there. A couple of comments from Carl. He says at one point, the old adage, if they're not what I consider a healthy size, then they're fat. It's so tiring, to be honest. Carl also goes on to say, what if you're Polynesian? Our body sizes are completely different. Because that's also another thing. Like, I mean, I know she's not saying necessarily BMI, but the lie of the BMI, like if BMI was what we took, then every male who was a sporting athlete would be morbidly obese because they just purely base it on weight. And if you were a muscular, like all the front row of the All Blacks would be on death's door according to the BMI. So whilst it is a yardstick, it's not a particularly good one. Kim says, I imagine that the advertising must work. And that's an interesting point as well. So Louise Wallace is kind of putting all this weight into the idea, pardon the pun, into the idea of what this will do to, rather than going, oh, this is going to sell our clothing, Louise Wallace thinks this is going to sell the person's body. And like if it's a plus size model wearing jeans, it seems that she's saying that people are going to see that advertising and not want to buy the jeans, but want to look like the model. That makes no sense to me whatsoever. I think what Kim's saying is the advertising must work. There must be also pitching to a sector of society that needs those genes, whatever it is, and so you have those people in place. If you want to sell a pair of size 17 or 18 or 20 jeans, then it's probably best to use a 17 or 18 or 20 size model as opposed to a size 4 model where the jeans won't look anything like what they'd look on a size 16 or 17 or 18 size female. I don't know. Let's play this last clip. And this is actually going back to the sugar tax, which is why I didn't pay the first one. And Nathan has an idea of how the sugar tax could actually work.
I want to say real quick that people slam this whole sugar tax going, oh, it doesn't work. But what if we, like, you take that money and you put it towards something like, picture this, like a My Food Baggie kind of thing, but it's available for the nation. It's run more centralised, and it's like, because obesity is a problem it's socio-economic as well. And because cheaper food is usually more unhealthy. I'm like, let's subsidise like a healthy food box that you can get the whole nation eating healthy. New Zealand could be a very awesome place.
No, I'm going to cut off the last comment from her because, as we've all said, no one else wants to hear.
Oh, you can tell she's winding up to something.
Yeah. She wants to tell people to plant veggie gardens. That was what her comment is afterwards. She's like,
again, it's so basic. It's so basic. When she's harking back to the good old days of every family having a veggie patch.
Yeah.
Do you know what else was common around there? One person working.
And also not living till you were 62, like she is. It's not very normal based on those standards either. Doing
a veggie patch is fucking work. You need someone there to tend it. And generally that was the person that stayed home. That was my family growing up in the 80s.
Let me also, and this is going to sound really arrogant, but I think for 40 years of overweightness, I've got some say in this, right? It's my lived experience. Drop some knowledge on the overweight issue, right? And this is for real. If people are significantly overweight, we're not talking about 5 or 10 kilos, but significantly overweight, then I believe that the most likely chances they probably have food addiction issues, because you have to say without question, to get 30, 40, 50, 100 kilos overweight, and they're the people I'm talking about, you have a bad relationship with food. You can't not get to that point and not have a bad relationship with food. Now, that might be a psychological issue, and you use food as an outworking of it. It might be an addictive issue directly to food. And what I learned about myself at one stage in my life was I used food like an alcoholic used alcohol. So if you think about what an alcoholic would do with alcohol, that's what I did with food. Now, it was very difficult for me to have people I know say to me, well, just, go on a diet. Just stop eating. And it was like saying to an alcoholic, well, that's a piece of piss. Just stop drinking. Right? So that's the first thing to think about when you're thinking of and looking at significantly overweight people. The second thing is, I read a book by a guy, actor in America, who talks about his food addictions. I can't remember his name. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But he talks about how an addiction to heroin is sexy, but addiction to food is not. An addiction to food is also the only addiction that you have where you have to keep using the thing you're addicted to, or else you'll die. If you're addicted to a drug, if you're addicted to alcohol, if you're addicted to porn, you don't need that in your life to actually continue living. Think about if you were addicted, if you were an alcoholic, but every day you still had to have a liter of alcohol to survive for the rest of your life. Or if you're a heroin addict and every day you had to have one shot for the rest of your life to survive. That's what it's like for someone who's got a food addiction. They have to continue to have a relationship and interact with the thing that has caused them their troubles in their health and that they're addicted to, but not just put it to the side and go cold turkey or figure out a way through counseling and hard work to not need it anymore. They always need it, or else they will die. So it's a very different scenario. Yeah, Paul's saying you can die from heroin withdrawal. I know, but you can also get through that and then not need heroin. But the heroin withdrawal can be immediate and can happen there and then. But after you've gone through that, it doesn't happen a year later. So it's I've found for me, and I think it's important for people to know, to think about it in a different way. To me, to think about, again, significant weight issues, not the 5 or 10 kilos overweight, but the 40 or 50 kilos overweight. You should be thinking about them like an addict, like an alcoholic with alcohol. I'll give you an example, right? I did a quiz online talking about alcoholics, and it was like, do you hide alcohol around the house? Yes, I did that with food. Do you tell lies to cover your intake of alcohol? Yes, I did that with food. So like all of those boxes I would tick as well. Are you sometimes short of money for the monthly bills because of you spending it on food? Yes, I've done that as well. It is really paralleling for a lot of people all the way through. And it's a different concept and a different aspect for people when you understand it's not just lazy fat people who won't stop putting stuff in their mouth. For some people, maybe for a lot of people, I'll say for a lot of people who are significantly overweight, it's a real problem with food that's a lot harder than just stop eating and exercise, like people like this crazy old bint is going on about. It's not just as simple as that for a lot of people. And for me, like I said, I'm down 24 kilos. It's been 40 years to get to a point where I've been on this journey where I am right now since I was 40. So for, 7-8 years, and it's taken me another 7 or 8 years to get to a point where I've had the ability to actually then do that. So I'm just putting it out there. I'm not trying to, say woe is me, because it's not. But when we think about other people and we think about people who are going through that, I would just encourage people not to think about, look at that disgusting, lazy, fat person. I wish they'd just stop eating and exercise. If you wouldn't think it about an alcoholic or someone, I mean, I guess you could think about it, someone who's got a porn addiction, just stop watching it, but you don't typically think about that, or a drug addict or something like that, then you shouldn't be thinking about it about someone who's 100 pounds or 50 kilos overweight. That's all.
No, good point. Good point.
I thought that the idea from the dude of sending little vegetable boxes around the country was very cute. It's like,
the little dude, Nathan. Yeah, I mean, I guess he's I mean, you know, he's a good egg, is Nathan, and he's looking
But it
for.
is,
I mean,
it's sort of indicative of these sort of little ideas where really we've already got supposedly a system set up called a nation state with a welfare system with regulatory powers that is failing because there's a duopoly, there's food that is bad for you that's cheaper than food that is good for you.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's why it rubs me the wrong way, the little boxes of vegetables.
Fair enough. I think what he's probably thinking about, if we tax, for example, the Coca-Colas and Pepsis of this world, what are we going to do with that money?
Goes.
What are we going to do with that money to help the issue? So I wouldn't be surprised if that was a little idea off the top of his head. But actually, Crazy Old World has just talked also about, I mean, if sometimes you struggle to relate to an idea or of like a heroin addict, then just think about smokers. You know, we all know how hard it is to give up smoking. Yeah, and yes, there is 1 in 1,000 smokers that just go cold turkey, and they just stop one day and they never pick up another one. But for most of them, it's a real struggle, and it takes a really long time to get rid of that habit, not just the chemical addiction, but the habitual one. I have to tell you, I mean, I wasn't ever really a smoker, but you know, in my 20s at university at a pub with a drink, you know, you'd light up or you'd get one off your friend or that kind of stuff. And I still find myself, when I have a beer in my hand or something, I still find myself doing this when I'm holding the beer, because it's habitual. And I haven't smoked since I was at university, you know, 20 plus years. But there is a habitual thing to break as well as a chemical thing to break with smoking. And I would say to you again, it's the same in food. I don't know necessarily about chemical, but there is a nutritional thing to break and there is a habitual thing to break. How many people out there kind of at nighttime when they're not hungry just go, I just feel like something while I'm watching television, and that becomes the cycle, and that becomes the habitual thing that you need to break. I'm just thinking more about it like an addiction, as opposed, and I'm not trying to, you know, play the violin and say everybody out there who's morbidly obese, just be so nice to them now, and you know they need. I'm just saying, and honestly, if you see someone who is morbidly, or if you have someone in your life who you never thought this before, think about them like an addict. Think about their relationship with food, like a smoker is to tobacco, or an alcoholic is to alcohol, or a drug user is to drugs, if they're addicted, that is obviously. And it changes your perspective. It also makes it much easier to think about how to help them. Because all of a sudden, they're not just fat, disgusting things on a billboard. They're people who have value and need help and, you know, need support, rather than just being scorned as, well, we don't want to normalize this, do we?
I'm just imagining Louise's head exploding to this whole conversation, and it's very satisfying. You know, I really dislike those just real basic reckons that we get on TV and stuff like that. Whereas in the chat that we've just had, we've gone, okay, here's, like, you got the supermarkets, you got the socioeconomic, you got the psychological, you got the addiction-based issues. That's what obesity is. There's everything there, but for Louise, it was billboards. I don't want to see fatties on a billboard.
From the School of Mathematics and Statistics at the University of Canterbury, Professor Michael Plank. Mike, thanks for joining us so much, man. Good to have you on board.
Kia ora, Pat. Nice to be here.
Yeah, well, look, big announcement, because I was driving and listening to the Prime Minister at 4 o'clock live, so I was kind of doing this and this, but I think I heard her say that it's the first time in 3 years there's going to be sort of no restrictions at all. Really, there are a few, like in healthcare settings, but really almost society can get back to life before the pandemic when it comes to things like masks, mandates, that sort of thing, on the most. And I thought this will be really interesting to talk about. I've already seen on Twitter some people kind of going, ooh, and other people going, woohoo. So we first met you, we being me in this thing, talking about modeling. I want to talk to you about modeling for this shortly, but the first thing is just your reaction to the announcement today of not just going to green, but going bye-bye to the traffic light system.
Yeah, look. Overall, I think today's changes are a pretty sensible response to the situation that we're in now. You know, cases, hospitalizations, and deaths are at the lowest levels we've seen since February. And so the risk level we have in the community is much, much lower than we've seen in recent times at the moment. Now, it may not stay that way forever, and sooner or later we will get another wave of COVID. So we need to keep ready, and we need to be prepared to change things up if the situation warrants it. But on the other hand, I don't think we can sort of necessarily keep measures in place forever, just because we might need them at some point in the future. So I think it's more about we really should be focusing now on a set of measures that can largely happen in the background, unnoticed by the general population on a day-to-day basis, and that includes things like ventilation, sick pay entitlements, so that people don't, they can afford to stay home if they're sick, as well as continued investment in vaccine development and delivery.
As I was listening to the absolute words, as in she was using absolute phrases of the Prime Minister. She said it's now safe. And I thought, safer? Would safer have been a better word? Because safe, like we talk about the messaging that's come out from the 9th floor, and sometimes I'm a bit concerned that now everyone will go, there's nothing to worry about. Because the Prime Minister has used the word, it's now safe. She also said, this will be the first summer in 3 years that nothing will get cancelled and that you can make your summer plans. That's not what you've just said, Michael. You've kind of said there could be some ups and downs, and there could be changes. The way the Prime Minister said it today was like, we are never going back. Do you agree that was her messaging, and how would you respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, what does safe mean? Nothing is ever 100% safe, including going out of your front door in the morning, right? So, these things aren't black and white. It is always shades of grey. Things are certainly a lot safer now than they have been earlier on in the year,
for sure,
from a COVID point of view. But yeah, we're still in a volatile and difficult to predict situation. We don't know when the next sort of major new variant will come along. Whether we'll get a sort of another Omicron, something that sort of completely comes out of left field and really causes a major wave in that way, or whether we'll settle down into a slightly more predictable pattern where the virus will continue to evolve, but maybe it does it more gradually rather than that sort of big leap that we saw with Omicron. I don't think we know that for certain yet. So, yeah, it's certainly hard to give certainties. That's definitely true.
When we met, as I said earlier, we met you, BHN met you in your capacity as a modeller. Has there been any modelling done for this moment? And, like the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, what does it tell us if there has been some done?
Yeah, look, we have been doing some modelling around the effect of changes in the transmission rate that might result from things like less mask use in the community. I should caveat it at the start by saying it's really difficult to know what the effect of a change in a specific policy is.
Yeah.
Because I think it's fair to say that mask use has already probably dropped off a bit since maybe earlier in the year when Omicron first came along. And of course, some people will continue to wear masks, and that's great. We should be grateful to anyone wearing a mask because they're doing a small action to reduce the risk for everyone by doing that. So how much of a change we'll see as a result of today's announcements is difficult to predict. What I would say we can see in the modelling is that if you have a change in the transmission as a result of a policy change, that can give you a short-term bump. So maybe we'll see an increase in cases following today's announcement. I'm not sure that will happen, but it's possible. However, the effect on the long-term number of infections is smaller. There's sort of a natural equilibrium in this system now, and changes in the short term can bump you around, and you might get a bump in cases. But in the long term, it's probably going to have a marginal effect going forward on the number of infections that we get. That's not to say it doesn't matter or that we shouldn't bother with it, because of course there are high-risk people and people who are protected by mask wearing that are vulnerable for whatever reason. And so wearing masks is still important to reduce risk for those people.
When it comes to modeling and kind of looking at the, how it's flowing through society and the numbers behind it and stuff, I mean, I'm not superstitious, but it's kind of that thing you don't want to say things out loud in case you affect the outcome, that sort of vibe. But it feels like we've had Omicron for quite a long time and we haven't seen any more variants. What needs to happen for us to kind of go, well, that's our bird flu done, that's our swine flu done, it's now actually all behind us, and it's not, we're either gonna live with this forever, which seems to be the common parlance for the last year or so, but the numbers are dramatically dropping every day. And what would we need to actually see for a bit to be us going, remember 2 years ago when COVID was in the community and it's no longer around?
Yeah, I don't think there's a sort of a sudden day where everyone will agree that the pandemic is over. I think, pandemics start with a bang, but they end with a whimper.
Right.
I think, gradually, it will be a process where the pandemic gradually tapers away over a period of years. I mean, for example, the 1918 flu pandemic was still causing waves of flu for several years. And the impacts of that, went on for quite a long time. So yeah, I don't think there's sort of an agreed definition of when the pandemic ends. I think it will end over a gradual time period as we see a reduction in the health burden, but also the response to it. There was a nice piece I read in The Guardian, I think it was not long ago, that talked of three types of ends to the pandemic, one being the health end, or the medical end to the pandemic, the other one being the social end to the pandemic, which is, when do people sort of go back to their normal lives for the most part, and the other one I think was the political end to the pandemic. So there's sort of, there's these different aspects to it, and arguably we're perhaps close to the political and the social end of the pandemic, but maybe not quite at the medical end yet.
I'm trying to ask this of a few people through the day since the announcement, and I've said all the way through, I've probably said this to you, Michael, that especially since Omicron's come in, and especially since we moved to orange, I'd like to try and get my information from people like you and from Anna Brooks and from Michael Baker, as opposed to necessarily from the 9th floor. I'm no conspiracy theorist, not saying the 9th floor is out to hurt anyone, but sometimes it seems that some people who are at the pointy end are saying something slightly different from the people, after it goes through what the consensus for the country is. So I was just thinking after the announcement, people like yourself who are in the thick of it, I'm someone who kind of goes to the supermarket most days. I buy little things, and I thought I was at the supermarket today and I wore my mask, and what would I do tomorrow when I don't have to? And I thought, I want to ask you guys that question. So if you were in a place today where you had to wear a mask, like a petrol station or a supermarket or a general place today, what will you be doing tomorrow, actually, you personally?
I should start off by saying I don't often go into shops. We generally get our groceries online or do the click and collect thing.
But somewhere, might attend.
Yeah. Will I change what I'm doing? I don't. Probably not. At least to start with, I think. I think I already sort of consider a little bit when should I wear a mask and when don't I, and that I probably won't change anything too drastically straight away. But I think over time, you do reevaluate that a little bit, and perhaps the situations where I wear a mask now are not quite the same as what they were in March of this year. So I think a gradual reevaluation of that sort of thing is okay. I mean, it does also depend whether you've had it. We know that the immunity you get from prior infection is not perfect, and it wanes over time. But if you've had COVID relatively recently, and you've cleared your rats are negative, then you're pretty low risk.
Yeah. For BA5. Yeah. No one knows about the next iteration, should there be one? But,
absolutely. Yeah. And of course, waning immunity is a thing, and if it's if it's several months, 6 months since you've had it, then that risk does start to ramp back up again.
And I guess the flip side to having it is having a booster. I know that the boosters, that fourth booster, is still only for over 50s or healthcare workers. I may have missed it. You may know. Tell us if you have. But what I'll say is I've missed it at the point of us recording this conversation. Maybe by the time we broadcast, I won't have. But I don't know anything, because the other thing is to be updated with your boosters. So I'm under 50. I would do a fourth hit if they offered it to me now, but they're not. So that's the flip side of that. Has there been any conversation that you've heard out there about when that's going to be made more available to under 50s?
I think Minister Verrill said they're expecting an announcement on that this week. So I don't know what that announcement will be, but certainly watch this space, and completely agree. Look, making sure you're up to date with your boosters is the number one thing that anyone can do to protect their own health. But it does also have an effect on transmission as well. And the other thing to keep an eye on is the new updated vaccines that Pfizer and others have rolled out now, or are starting to roll out, that specifically target Omicron. Cool. These aren't available in New Zealand yet, but hopefully, at some point they will be. And these are potentially going to give people better protection to the current crop of variants as well.
I think they'll go all Oprah Winfrey on it, won't they? You get a vaccine, you get a vaccine, everybody gets a vaccine. Because that's surely, if they're opening it up, that's the flip side. They also have to offer the protections if they're going to open it up, or else those who either don't have that natural immunity from a recent case or who aren't up to date will then continue to, that's the other way to put it, in the rear vision mirror eventually, whenever that is, I would assume. Not being the layman here, Michael, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how I see it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll continue to see vaccines prioritized towards those who are higher risk, which primarily for COVID means older people. It's not to say that younger people shouldn't get vaccinated, but it might start to look something a little bit more like flu, where there's an annual update, or some sort of on a regular cycle, you're offered an updated vaccine, much as we are with annual flu jab.
Very good. Last question. It's just really, one word answer. Are you kind of excited about this announcement today? Do you think choice cool, or are you more like a bit apprehensive, or you think it's the wrong decision?
I wouldn't say excited, but I think it's got the balance about right.
All right, that's us. Hey, that's a week of best ofs. It's funny how you do a best of so you don't have to go to work, and then it takes you several hours to prepare the best of, so you're not being at work. But that's us. We're done. Lovely week. I don't know where I am right now. I might be in bed somewhere in the lovely suburb in Auckland of Devonport. But we will see you Monday night, 10 p.m. for a regular broadcast, back to the regular broadcast, where we're live in the studio at 10 p.m. with you, talking news of the day. Now, talking news of the day means then you can get involved as well. Speaking of being involved, as you see on the bottom of the screen right now, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify is a place that you can listen to the audio version of the show. Especially if you're on Apple, if you would like to rate and review us, it helps us with the algorithm. So there's several ways you can support us. One is to get involved with sharing our stuff around and rating and ranking our stuff. Likes on videos, reviews on podcasts, that sort of thing. Sharing them through your Twitter feeds, telling people about us. So sort of being an advocate for us. That's one of the ways you can be involved. Obviously, the other ways you can just be involved is to watch and listen, which is great because it helps our numbers. And the last way you can get involved is obviously being involved with our Patreon, patreon.com/Big Hairy News. Won't mention too much about this because I have talked about it all week, but we've been going for a couple of weeks with our Patreon. We've been going for 7 months, but we've only had the Patreon up for a couple of weeks because we are doing this incrementally. We're adding something in, then we're adding something in, we're adding something in. And hopefully by the time I get back next week, we might be about to add in a website. It's being worked on at the moment, but we're just doing it slowly because part of it is we're funding it ourselves and we're getting help and various things. So we're just going slowly by slowly. But so we're going to had the Patreon going for a couple of weeks. But in that couple of weeks, 20 or 30 kind of regular people have jumped on board and wanted to help us do what we're doing, and we appreciate the fuck out of you. Let's be honest. And if you want to also be involved there, then we would love to have you on board, and you can just head to patreon.com/Big Hairy News to find out more about it. Okay, I think that's us. I'm not going to tease what's coming up tomorrow night because there's nothing coming up tomorrow night because it's Friday. Hopefully you're safe. Hopefully you're well. and we'll see you from Monday night. Appreciate you. Thank you. Hooroo.